The industry average for success on a dating app is about 9%. Matchmaking. I think matchmaking is one of the huge growth areas, and I'm very excited for that because matchmaking has a success rate on average of between 70 and 80%. For your listeners out there that are thinking, well, what the hell is the difference between a dating app and a matchmaker? Let me just school you for a second.
What does 3-day rule stand for?
Yeah, so the 3-day rule sort of moniker is there's a 3-day rule approach to successful dating. So if you want to date successfully, you need to follow a 3-day rule approach.
Adam, thank you so much for joining me for a great conversation about all things dating.
Of course, thank you for having me.
I wanted to kick things off by a little bit of foundation, what set you up to actually pursue a career in the dating industry, because you have worked for so many big giants involved in the space. You build products yourself, and I feel like there needs to be some kind of passion to be able to tie yourself to one industry like dating.
Yes. I think it's a lifelong passion, a labor of love, and pun intended. Yeah, I think the business of love is the coolest industry. Bringing people together for friendship or for, work relationships or for romance has always been something that's important to me. And for me, I started when I was 22 as a graduate student at Harvard. I built a website in 2007 that connected all the graduate campuses. And so it was creating cross-disciplinary relationships. It was creating love. It was creating friendships. It was creating a network for people that were studying in different fields. And so it was a really fun technology that I built. And it ended up staying around for a couple years, I think 4 or 5 years. The school was using it in order to facilitate romance, friendships, and interdisciplinary connections. So I've been doing this for a very long time, and I love it.
And as you have been involved in the space on the professional side, I wanted to ask you if you practice what you preach, and what's been the impact on your personal life?
Yeah, look, I think that, oftentimes it's easier to give others advice than to accept your own advice, and I'm aware of all of that. I think that in my relationship, I think, communication is definitely the cornerstone to relationship success. It all starts from how you feel and communicating how you feel to others. I think that when you stop communicating, even the difficult things, relationships get strained. And that could be friendships, that could be colleagues at work. You have to be honest, and there are nice ways of articulating how you feel, but it's getting through the hard times. It's putting in the work, which is what allows relationships to be sustainable. I think that in my case, my partner and I have been together for 14 years, and that's a very long time. And it's work. We both choose to be in a relationship. We both choose to be together, and I think a lot of people make that same decision, but it doesn't get easier. But we choose to be in this relationship because we're happier together. We complete each other. We feel good together. And I think being in relationships is amazing. I think that it makes life rewarding, life worth living. And I'm very excited to help those who want to find love and want to be in relationships, help them learn the skill of dating, how to be a successful dater, how to be intuitive about themselves and be honest with themselves, and how to be open to others and be vulnerable with others so that relationships can flourish.
That sets me up greatly for my next question, and that is, why is it so difficult to find love?
Yeah, you know what? I think that dating apps maybe initially try to do something good for the world to make it easier to find one another. And so whether you're heterosexual or from the LGBTQ plus community, using an app allows you to have instant access to potentially millions of potential matches. I think that, so in theory, it sounds great. I think in practice, the way that the apps were designed initially was for sort of instant gratification and filtering your way into, building the perfect person for you, and telling the world that there's a million fish in the sea. So if the person's not exactly just right, come back on the app and there's so many more people for you to find. I think apps can be successful and can work to someone's advantage. I think a lot of it's based on how it's being used. If you're using it the right way and you come across someone else who's using it the right way, it can be very successful. Although the industry average for success on a dating app is about 9%, which means 9% of people leave a dating app because they're in a relationship either from the app or otherwise, but they delete the app because they're in a relationship. So it's still only about 9%. While the world is on dating apps and using them, when you look at the actual success rate of a dating app, it's still not that high. So I think people are still relying on their network, colleagues, and matchmakers to find them love in the wild.
And like you have been involved in so many different products and different dating companies and built some of them yourself. What have you learned about building products that serve a very wide range of users versus building something for a very, very specific niche?
Yeah, look, I think it is a challenge in this industry. If you're building a dating app, you need so many people of that niche on the app in one area that is of every age, of every gender, of every geo, in order for the app to work successfully. And I think acquiring enough people to use the app or getting enough customers in a specific geo is very difficult, which is why you don't see a lot of new entrants in the industry become successful. It literally requires millions of dollars or a massive social media blitz. Even celebrities have tried to start dating apps, and even though they're so popular, it has fallen flat. So there is a way of doing this correctly that I think some companies have gotten right. But the reality is there hasn't been massive innovation in the space. The biggest ones today are the same ones from 10 years ago. The churn in the industry, so the number of people that download and then delete is still like pretty high. And so it's a difficult industry to be in, and I think it's significantly underinvested from a VC standpoint. But there is a lot of cool technology on the horizon. So my hope is that the industry gets more investment and we start to invest in new and different types of technologies that show a next phase of growth, both for dating apps as well as for matchmaking. I think matchmaking is one of the huge growth areas that has been around for literally, hundreds of years. And in many cultures, your community, your family is part of the love finding experience, and now it's become westernized, and I'm very excited for that because matchmaking has a success rate on average of between 70 and 80%. So when you have someone advocating for you, selecting people for you, and also coaching you through the process of dating successfully, the outcomes are significantly better. And so when you're really high intent, there could be other options for you outside of a typical dating app.
So we'll definitely get to it, but I feel like you are describing the success of the dating apps that you mentioned is in the region of about 10% versus the success of the matchmakers and the hands-on approach, which is on the very opposite side of the spectrum. So I definitely would like to dive into what you are at currently, which I think is very related to this. But you have previously also started, scaled, and exited yet another dating company called S'more. And I wanted to bring that back a little bit because, from my perspective, it seems like you have nailed it. And you mentioned how difficult it is to build a product from the ground up and introduce it to the market because you need a large volume of users to succeed. But I wanted to get a little bit of insight from your head how you went about figuring out what the right approach is to differentiate yourself and then go all the way to build that out, launch it in the market, and then potentially also exit it as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I began my career at a company called the Meet Group. So they own 7 different dating products. Now they're owned by ProSieben, which is a big German media company that owns eHarmony and Parship. So I spent my beginning of my career there, learning product, learning marketing, learning advertising, and sort of understanding how to grow the business side of an app. And back then, we monetized these apps through ads. And, 5 years later, it was basically all subscriptions. And now it's sort of a mix of subscriptions as well as with ads. So the monetization component's quite different. I also spent time at Bumble. I was the managing director of one of their apps called Chappy, which is a gay relationship app. So a more long-term relationship app in that segment. And then I've also consulted for a number of dating apps, sold dating apps, and then basically created my own called S'more, as you referenced. And the reason I created S'more, this was in 2019, at the beginning of 2019, what I found was that whether it was Bumble or Tinder or really any of these apps, 85% of the screen that you were on, right? So 85% of your screen was a photo of a person. And what that was telling me was it really was encouraging people to judge a book by its cover. And as we know, when we date people and we do that, it tends to not work because the average person is on a dating app for about 6 years. So when you start judging a book by its cover and people start judging you, you start to kind of diminish the important qualities that a person has as it relates to relationships. Do they value family? Do they value religion? Do they value education? Are they ambitious? Are they goal oriented? All of these things that you care about in a partner, you don't know anything about them. All you know is, do you think that they're hot or not compared to the last person? And knowing what the success rate of dating apps was at the time, I thought that I could do better. And so I said, imagine you had a dating app where you couldn't see a person's face initially, but instead, and again, this was in 2019. So for your listeners, this may not be as innovative 5 years later because maybe you've seen things like this, but in 2019, no one did this. And I said, imagine I created a dating profile that had audio recordings, your voice, answering questions, important questions, but through voice. So you can hear the way a person answers a question. You can hear the sexiness of their voice or the raspiness of their voice or the annoyance of their voice and fall in love with more than a photo. And then imagine profiles were three-dimensional, where you can read more about a person as if they were a book. And you can see images of places that they traveled and maybe images of dogs or people that are in their family, but not of them. And instead, every time you send and receive a message, you can see a little bit more of a person. And that was the premise behind S'more, which was the world's first anti-superficial dating app in America. And S'more also stands for something more. And so again, that was the premise of the app that we built. And then we created a celebrity dating show to help to promote the product. When we launched the app, we had really no idea what people would say. And it seems like almost instantly it became a polarizing conversation across America. I mean, we had Whoopi Goldberg on The View talking about S'more and saying she would never use a dating app where you couldn't see a person's face. How idiotic is that? And then you had Andrew Yang, who was running for president at the time, saying, no, any kind of app that gets two people to have real conversations is a step forward in an industry that people are having very few conversations and where substance doesn't matter as much. And so it felt like with S'more, the world was having conversations around how do we improve dating and make it more than just a pretty face. And so ran this company, built this company, S'more, and then sold the company 4 years later to a large matchmaking company in the industry.
How did you pull it off to involve people from the celebrity spectrum and to basically make sure that you actually break the barrier of having the critical mass of the users?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's creativity and tenacity. I had been in the space for a long time, and what I understood was in order to build a sustainable audience, you really have to spend a lot of money, and you need a lot of people on the app at the same time in a geography in order for the app to work well and for people to have enough matches in their area. And so what I decided to do was take a page from Bumble's playbook. You know, I spent some time working at Bumble and getting close to Whitney Wolf and the amazing staff that she built at that company. And I said, we need to build a brand that stands for more. We need to build a brand that says, questions the superficiality of dating apps and says, don't you deserve something more? Don't you deserve to not be judged just based on the way you look? And it's not just for people that are average looking, but for people that are drop dead gorgeous and actors and models. When those people use a standard dating app, do you know the amount of harassment that they get? So what happens is, the most attractive people get all these great messages and then they're harassed in a way and they leave the apps. So it doesn't really work for anybody. And so I wanted to level set. No matter what you looked like, this app was about conversation first. And so in order to build the brand, I understood that if we didn't have millions of dollars to spend on marketing, we needed to do something that was going to keep the brand in the news every single week. And so I started to reach out to celebrities on Instagram, literally through DMs, whether it was housewives or people from The Bachelor or singers or actors or models, what have you. And I said, we're going to create a dating show that normalizes how crazy dating could be, the good, the bad, the ugly. So people don't feel like they're on a desert island by themselves. They don't feel lonely. They don't feel like, I can't believe that just happened to me. Something must be wrong with me. No, nothing's wrong with you. That's how dating actually is. It's crazy. And so normalizing some of the crazy stories makes people feel like they can do this. And so the show was a little fun and a little bit of infotainment, but also provided people the tools they needed to be better at dating. And so I would reach out to all these celebrities through DMs, and that's how we started. We got a couple big name celebrities to start as being guests on the show. And then we ended up having, companies like Netflix and Bravo, the production companies at Bravo, reach out to us and ask us to interview their celebrities about dating and relationships. And so it became this great show, shot over 300 episodes, and you can still see all of the videos on the S'more Instagram. It still exists today.
Well, that's massive. 300 episodes. What would you say were some of the obstacles, some of the biggest obstacles on your journey of building Outsmore?
Yeah, look, I'm a hustler. So, I think, you need to have a
I can
special
see that.
personality. Yeah, you need to have a special see, if someone gave me a bunch of money, I'd probably not use it correctly. I think having less money forces you to be creative and forces you to be resourceful. And so it kind of separates the real entrepreneurs from people who think it's fun, but don't actually have a plan. And I think that for me, I was always going to figure out a way of making it work. And that's sort of part of my core. So yeah, I think it was very difficult. The obstacles are endless. When you have your own business, you are responsible for your own enjoyment. I was in a relationship, so you still want to make sure you have happiness and peace in the home and that's running well. You have all these investors, you have all these employees, and then you have 500,000 customers. So you kind of feel like you're being pulled in all these different directions. And at S'more, with all the users, all the customers we only had 8 employees. So we didn't just hire people. We hired one person that did the job of 4 people. We hired really well, and we hired people that were dedicated to the cause. And it is only because of the team that we hired that we became so successful. Hands down, this would have failed many, many years earlier if the right team was not in place. So 100% the success of this goes to the people that founded the company.
What motivated you to seek an exit for the company, and what was the biggest takeaway for you to go through that process, especially for someone who might be thinking about going through the same thing?
Yeah, look, I think for us, we were in the middle of COVID. We did not know what was happening with COVID. And while the usage of dating apps was extremely high and we were doing very well, we still weren't profitable. So we still needed to fundraise in order to continue, to operating the business. So we were in the midst of a funding round. And when you're in a funding round, you're talking to VCs and angels and family offices and strategic investors. And we were lucky enough to get 3 offers for our company. And we, evaluated each of those offers and against continuing to raise. And we said, look, the future's uncertain here. We've built a successful brand. This can be a successful way of exiting and still being able to continue to be in the industry and continue to build something important. And so that was the calculus that we made. And yeah, I think that we made a good decision at the time.
Have you stayed involved after the transaction?
Yeah, I stayed with the new company for more than a year after the transaction. And really at that company is where I learned the intricacies of matchmaking and sort of the other side of the industry that I think most people don't see. You're usually on the dating app side and you have this mass audience that you don't know very well, or you're on the matchmaking side where it's much smaller, but it's much more personalized. And, I understood that there is a world in the future in which these things can converge and these things can help generate, millions of success stories when technology meets personalization. And so I think that that's probably the future of the industry.
I feel like the dating apps are getting all the spotlight these days. The, I would say, coaching in terms of dating is becoming more and more popular. But I think the matchmaking side of things is, at least from my perspective, still something that is relatively hidden. And it seems like we might be on the verge of shifting those trends with what you are after these days.
Yeah, I will argue that the future of the dating app world is matchmaking. It is the area of massive growth because I think what's happening with dating apps is they've charged so much money for basic services. See more people, see people in other cities. It's the same old, same old, same old, same old. And they're trying to really increase the prices of the same features and adding new features that people don't value. So I think they've really hit the max of what they could charge. What's interesting is in the matchmaking world, the price is significantly higher, and those people though are very high intent. They want to be in relationships. They're willing to spend money, put their money where their mouth is, put the time where their mouth is, and invest in relationships. And I think that's what you don't really have on dating apps. What people are looking for, what they say they're looking for, and actually what they do are totally misaligned on dating apps in most cases. In the matchmaking world, it's not, which is why you have much more success. If dating apps want to charge much more, they've got to shift their services into higher order level services, which is love, which is longer term relationships. People will pay for those if they feel like they're going to be successful. My view is that some of the biggest players in the world won't be successful in the matchmaking space because they weren't successful in the dating app world. So if you didn't trust them with love for the first 6 years and you spent all this money, why are you going to give them thousands more? Probably not. So my view is that the future of dating and the dating app world and matchmaking world is a company called 3 Day Rule. So for those of you who are out there trying to Google this, go get on it right now because in January, which is really coming up, there's going to be a massive announcement about 3 Day Rule, which is going to rock the world. When I say rock the world, it's not a little press release on something that's cute. It's a massive announcement to the industry about 3 Day Rule, which I think will be very transformative. And the idea is matchmaking doesn't have to just be for the 5% wealthiest of Americans. It can be for everyone if we design the future of dating apps to actually be a matchmaker, not a dating app. And for your listeners out there that are thinking, well, what the hell is the difference between a dating app and a matchmaker? Let me just school you for a second. On a dating app, you are the decision maker. You are the chooser. You are going through the wild, wild west and choosing people. They're choosing you. You're matching. You're talking, and then you're going on dates, hopefully. With a matchmaker, they're doing the work for you. The reason why matchmaking is so successful is someone gets to spend time getting to know everything there is to know about you, what makes you tick, your personality, your likes, your dislikes, your love languages. And so when they're looking for matches for you, they're literally interviewing people on your behalf and getting to understand what the X factor might be between two people. If they don't feel a sense of, wow, their personalities really connect and there's something physical that these people will like about each other, they're not going to make the introduction because there's no point. So they're going to do all these interviews, they're going to do all this vetting, and they're going to present to you the people they feel like you'd really mesh with. And then all you need to do is show up on a date. So they've done all the background work for you. They've done all the vetting for you. They've hopefully coached you and the person that you're dating to get ready for love, to be authentic on the dates, how to show up on a date. And then when you show up, the person's high quality. They're usually very similar interests. There's a lot of commonalities there, and the chemistry is on fire. And that's the difference between someone else vetting for you and looking at what you need to be successful versus you doing it yourself and sometimes selecting the candy, with a shiny, cute little object versus the person that's going to be actually fully compatible to you.
What now pops in my head is that matchmaking sounds to me like something that really is more of an offline thing, right? More of an like it's not it's way different than hopping on an app, but I do believe that there's an element that you have in mind
Yes.
how you will be able to leverage the current power of technology. And I know that you have mentioned that big announcement that will be happening in January, but I would love to pick up your brain in terms of how you think that the current state of technology can help to do better matchmaking and to basically optimize that process.
Yeah, so a few things. Look, I think the matchmaking world is interesting because one of the things that matchmakers have that dating apps don't have is what they do for their clients is they collect post-date feedback. So the matchmaker actually knows why the date worked out or did not work out. So if you come to a company like Three Day Rule, who's been doing this for 15 years and has tens of thousands of success stories and tens of thousands of dates, I should say, we know why the date worked out or didn't work out. So we can feed all the reasons why it did or did not into an algorithm. We understand what you find attractive about the person, but we can feed all that information to an algorithm that's going to say what is more compatible to a person. Instead of you filtering by this guy's got to be this height, this color eyes, this, manufacturing the right person for you versus understanding what worked in terms of the connection between two. So that's important. I think also a lot of the ways that dating apps are using AI aren't really going to help daters. You know, have a better photo on your profile. Well, if it doesn't look like you or it's you from 10 years ago, it's not really going to help in the long term, right? It might get you the date and you're going to be in the same position that you were. When they talk about, AI is writing your bios for you, I want the bio to still reflect who the person is. And by the way, I want the single to work. If you as a single person think someone's going to date for you, talk for you, write your bio for you, do your photos for you, and you're going to get into this relationship and it's going to be smooth sailing, you got another thing coming for you because the reality is relationships take a lot of work. And so you do need to invest in yourself and you need to invest in the process. Once you've done that, you're ready for love, then the relationship chances for success really increase. And so I don't really want the AI to be doing the dating for you. I want the AI to help select the right people for you and have the knowledge of you and what you're interested in, plus the knowledge of what true compatibility is to make those right selections. And no dating app has that information because no dating app collects post-date feedback, but matchmakers do. So filtering all this information into an algorithm that can predict an outcome is something that companies like Three Day Rule will be doing in the very near future. And so even though some of your audience may not be able to afford their own matchmaker, and by the way, there's all kinds of price ranges, but even if they can't afford their own matchmaker, they can still go to 3dayrule.com and sign up to be in the database to potentially match with a client. So even if you're more of a passive dater, you can still date with intent. Again, the income doesn't matter. If you want your own, you can get your own. If you want to just be in the pool, in the network of singles who potentially can go on dates, you can do that today by just going to the website.
Just to understand a little bit of the foundation, what does 3 day rule stand for?
Yeah, so the 3 day rule sort of moniker is there's a 3 day rule approach to successful dating. So if you want to date successfully, you need to follow these a 3 day rule approach. It's the day before the date, getting ready for the date. It's the day of the date, what you need to do on the date and not do on the date, and what you need to do the day after the date in order to be successful as a dater. It's not just going on a date and crossing your fingers and praying to God that this thing works out. You need to work. You need to prep. It's the day before, it's the day during, actual date, and it's the day following. If you follow our guide, 3 day guide to successful dating, you will find success when it comes to love.
Would you mind highlighting some of the tips from that guide that stick with you the most?
I mean, really, it's our secret sauce. So if you became a client, you would know. But I'll give you sort of, one of the big ones in terms of date prep. You don't just want to show up on a date. You want to be feeling zen. You want to feel chilled out and you want to feel comfortable. A lot of people and a lot of women get very anxious when it comes to dating and they'll do a shot before or two shots before, a couple shots before. you want to do things that make you feel good. You want to have an endorphin rush before a date. And so it may be that the day before you do your date, you're talking to your friends about the date. You're getting excited about it. You're choosing what you're going to wear. You're choosing, am I going to take a bath? Am I going to take a shower? You're sort of planning out what you want to, how you want to feel before you go on that date. So it's not sort of last minute. So planning what you wear, planning how you feel, and planning how you want to show up on the date, I think is very important. I always also like to say, when you go on a date, look for three redeeming qualities about a person, three things that you think are positive about the person, and one physical characteristic that you like. Instead of looking for red flags, look for things that are positive about the person. They told me a story and they portrayed the fact that they're kind, they're generous, they're loving, they care about education, they care about politics, they care about religion. Find those things that are common that you like about the person. Three, find one physical characteristic about the person that you like, and that's enough for date number two. Again, so planning out this is important. On the date, right. So some of the most important things: do not be late for the date. Show up correctly. You want to dress to reflect your personality, not too much personality. You want to show skin if that's who you are and you feel comfortable doing that. You don't want to show everything. You want to reveal who you are as a person. You don't want to tell them your life story. They don't deserve your life story on the first date. So you need to think about on the date, what are the narratives that you want to share with them so that they can start asking questions about yourself. And then you can get into a real dialogue about each other. And it's really about asking those questions, active listening, and how to show up correctly on the date. And then I always say, after the date goes well, or if you think the date was okay, take 24 hours and think about this. Go home and on a piece of paper, write, what are the things that you really thought were interesting about the person, both emotional, values wise? What are the three things that you liked about the person? What's the at least one physical feature that you find cute or sexy or that you really want to see more of? And then, if there's not any gigantic red flag that you found out, go on another date. But I do think it's important to wait 24 hours and evaluate how you're feeling post date. Again, there's intricacies for each of these categories, and our clients get the full rundown and guide to successful dating within 3 days.
That was already pretty exhaustive and I think full of very, very useful tips. So thank you so much for that. And like you mentioned that coming into a date is like coming in with a positive mindset, with like a calm mind is very important. I wanted to ask you what are some of your practices to keep yourself in check because you navigate the entrepreneurial life, right? You run into obstacles nearly every day. How do you balance that yourself? What are some of your tips, tricks, and techniques that you practice to stay in the balance?
Yeah. Well, I just will say one last thing about this dating process. If when it all sums up, and if you're listening to this and fast forwarding, it all sums up to just being open to the possibility that this could be a great person, and not having the expectation that Prince Harry is going to walk through the door, but having the expectation that a great person is going to walk through the door, and you're going to have a great conversation, and you're going to get to know that person. And if it gets to the next level, wonderful. Again, I think that the mindset really matters when it comes to dating. We tend to think in a mindset of scarcity. Well, they're not going to like me because I'm curvy. They're not going to like me because I'm old. They're not going to like me because whatever it is, instead of having an abundance mindset. And I'm telling you that that mindset shift is a big reason why our clients are successful when dating. We help them shift that mindset before they even meet a person. So when they come into the date, they're open. They know who they want to show up as. They know how to be themselves on a date. They know how to convey themselves. So that's it for how to be successful in dating. In terms of what I do, I think it's important to stay physically fit and mentally fit as much as possible. So I get up every day at 5:30. I go to the gym every single day, at least 6 times a week, if not seven. That's why I don't like traveling that much. It gets me off my schedule. But I make it important. I make it an important point to be physical, go to the gym, sweat it out, get those endorphins rushing, because I also like to eat. So I want to make sure that I, work out and I feel good and I can eat well as well. I want to get some good sleep. So I'm getting at least 7 hours of sleep every single night. I wake up early, I go to sleep early, and yeah, I think I have a well-balanced life. You need to have friends, you need to have close family members, you need to have a support system in your life. And I think it's all about balance. And at this company, at 3 Day Rule, we make it a priority for everyone to feel balance. No one can be successful long term if they're overly stressed. And so we create an environment where people feel good and excited every single day, and it shows up in how they work with our clients.
I could not agree more. And as you mentioned, you have a big plan to make an announcement in January, so I can't wait for that. But outside of that, I was following your Instagram and I saw you posting about the future of the dating space and what's gonna happen there and how it's gonna grow. What are some of your predictions in terms of what's gonna happen outside of what you are after with 3 Day Rule?
So I think that the industry is ready for something new. And I think investors are now ready to invest in something new. 3 Day Rule is a company that is probably one of the most successful matchmaking companies in America. It's been around for 15 years and it has some of the highest customer satisfaction scores across any dating app or matchmaking company. And I do think that investors now are starting to look at millennials who are now turning 40 and still single, and young people not really be interested in dating apps. So there's all these single people out there, but how are they finding each other? And so I think the whole IRL component, people wanting to meet in the real world, people wanting to form these physical connections with one another is really important. And that's a really strong advantage to matchmaking companies. So I do believe that you'll see more investment from whether it's family offices or VCs or private equity into the matchmaking and IRL space. 3 Day Rule was purchased by a private office, a family office, a private investment group, and I think more of that will happen, and that's exciting. I think that that's a humongous opportunity, and then figuring out ways of layering on technology to be able to make the service more accessible is important at different income levels is important, and to think about how to deliver a service that still has an 80% success rate in an app form that could be on demand. And so that's the thing that we're building right now. And that's why I'm extremely excited about the future of the industry. I know it very well. I know the people, all the executives in it, and kind of what other people are working on. And it cannot be more excited for what we're building here.
Well, it's exciting times ahead for sure. Adam, I wanted to thank you so much for walking us through the dating landscape and giving very useful tips when it comes to going on dates.
You got it. Well, thanks for having me. And hopefully I'll come back again once we make our announcements in January and share more.
Let's make it happen. I hope you enjoyed it and will be very thankful for any comments or feedback. It always is very appreciated on our end when we hear back from people tuning in to the show. And I'll be looking forward to catching you next time.